Jake, we did it. We fucking did it.
We did it?
My
I'm
name
celebrating.
is Keegan Watson. This is my best buddy, Jake. We love talking about tabletop RPGs. Tabletop RPGs.
God damn it.
Sorry. We're the Gelatinous Dudes. Normally, we answer questions that we pull from the ether about how to help people, advice they need in their tabletop RPG games, be it the GMs, the players, whatever it is. But we finally played our first session of DaggerHeart. And
DaggerHeart.
I want to deep dive. We're going to talk all about it.
We're going to talk
everything
about
we
DaggerHeart.
did, the flow of the game, what we like, if we didn't like anything. We're getting deep. This one might be a long one, so buckle up, lock in, get some snacks,
grab a popcorn, and a Diet Pepsi.
'Cause we're going all the way. That's crazy that you didn't say root beer after all the root beer bits we've had on this show. Then you said Diet Pepsi. I'm honestly disappointed.
No.
Grab a root beer, crack it open on mic, and lock in.
Lock in. I'm locked in.
All right. So, Jake.
Keegan.
Obviously, I am GMing DaggerHeart for our group. And so I, was watching a lot of videos on it, prepping a lot, read the rule book a couple times before we first played. So I had a lot of exposure to it. But what were your first impressions as you started to learn what DaggerHeart was? What were you excited for? Curious about.
When we first discussed it, I really loved the idea of the hope and fear dice, and that you can roll with hope and you can roll with fear, and that there's like different outcomes that can come with that. If you roll with fear, the DM gets a fear token or whatever they call it. If you roll with hope, you get a little hope token, and then you can spend it on other things. Like, that is super, super interesting, and something that I don't think any other system, not that to my knowledge, has.
Yeah, I loved it. It did. There is one system that I can think of. The Star Wars game, Edge of the Empire, had the light side, dark side. So it'd be like, and then as the players use the light side points, they'd become dark side. If the GM used the dark side points, it'd become light side. So there's a little bit of bounce back and forth. I think it's great.
Those are a little different because those flip. Like, if you have 4 dark side tokens,
right?
They all say dark side. Yeah. The DM can flip those to light side.
Right, but these are individual, which I love. Yeah. I love the hope and fear mechanics. It's one, narratively interesting. It gives you a kind of scale of success and failure, which I like. But also I love. We had physical tokens for my fear and your guys' hope, and we kind of pooled them in the middle of the table, and it was great to see. You guys could see all the fear I had built up.
I like that the fear ones for you were all black, because it just made it look so much worse for us the entire time, and we're all like, "Oh my god, he's got so many." Yeah,
and we use these little gems, little plastic gems. Mine were black, and then I think it was red, green, and blue for you guys. And so there'd be little, just glittering colored gems in this void of black as I built up all this fear, and. Yeah, and I loved the visual representation, but I also loved when we finally started to get into some combat, you guys knew it was going to be tough because you had rolled with some fear, and so there was some fear points for me to spend for some extra actions and to spotlight enemies and extra effects and things like that. So and tough it was. So
tough it was. This system is super interesting in a lot of ways. I like combat a lot. I like that. In order for the bad guy to go, he has to either spend a fear, or the player has a player has to roll with fear
or fail.
But it seems like, or fail, somehow. It seems like that doesn't happen too often, or that happens. Sorry, not other way around. That happens often enough where you don't generally have to spend a fear to go. An amount of times it seems fair.
We have 3 players. And so I think the more players you have, there could be a situation where, like, if you had 4 or 5 players or 6 or 7 or whatever, and 4 or 5 of them have gone, it's like, okay, I'm going to spend a fear to jump in here and do some stuff. We have 3 players, so, like, you guys bounce around quite a bit, and, like, depending on how everybody's rolling as well will affect it. But you guys rolled with fear or failed quite a bit, and so there was quite a bit of back and forth between enemies and players, which made the combats more difficult for sure.
Yeah. I think if you had more players, like if you had 6 players, there'd definitely be a chance that, like, the monster, bad guy, whatever, would be having a turn, like, twice to every one person's one,
Yeah, it would be tough, and
it seemed like about, like, once every 3 rolls was roughly what we were hitting for
I'd say that was
the monster to go.
Yeah, and then, I mean, if you guys, like, if all 3 of you have gone and somebody's going, for their second turn now, like, that is probably the point where I'd be like, I'm gonna jump in here, spend a fear or whatever. But yeah, I loved the combat. It was very flowy. There's not necessarily turns, so you just kind of describe your action and you roll, and once you're done, somebody else can go, and the players have to be a little bit cognizant of who's gone recently. Like, who should we let do some cool stuff? You got to share, which some players might not like that. They might want a more, like, absolute system, which the book does have rules for. If you really want to do turns, the book has rules for how to do it. But I really liked it a lot.
I think with a small group like ours, it definitely is suited that we can just be narrative and don't have to do, like, initiative or something.
Yeah, and I
think we only really had one person do like 2 things in a row. So
yeah, something that I thought
we're all pretty active.
Yeah, something that I thought about that I think would be super fun is, like, it doesn't always feel good to have, like, a boring turn. And some examples I can think of are, like, a rogue taking a turn to hide is not necessarily super fun. Like, even though it'll make their next turn better, it's, like, not super exciting. Or, like, even a cleric, like, taking a turn to heal someone, super useful and great, but, like, not super fun for the cleric all the time, And so I think something that in this system that you could do that's really fun is, like, the rogue could hide and make an attack if people are cool with that,
Yeah.
The cleric could heal someone and get to attack, which I just think is very fun. Like, the thought of, rushing over to your ally to heal them up and then also charging into battle, I think is very cool and lets people do their useful utility stuff while not, like, losing their whole turn.
Yeah, there was a lot that I liked about the combat. I will say, though, the combat was difficult.
Yeah, it was hard.
The mechanic, the, like, hit mechanic is a bit interesting. So you explain the hit mechanic, because I think you know a lot more about it than I do. It's very different than most systems.
Yeah, so you guys have an evasion score. So I roll a d20 to try to hit you with an enemy, and it has to beat your evasion score. If it beats your evasion score, which I love that too, the evasion, because it can be flavored as anything. It can be your armor, like blocking, or it could be you dodging out of the way, or it could be a wizard throwing up a magical shield to block. I just love the flavor of it all. But if I beat your evasion score, that means I hit you. I then roll my damage, and then all the players have damage thresholds. And I tell you my number, so if I did, like, 16 damage to you, you compare that to your thresholds. So maybe your thresholds are 5 and 15. So 1 to 4 damage would be the lowest threshold, and that would deal 1 hit point. 5 to 15, or did I say 15 was the second threshold? So 5 to 14 would be the second threshold and deal 2 damage to you. And then anything 15 or above would be your third threshold, and it would deal 3 hit points. So you can only take 1, 2, or 3 damage to your actual hit points. And then your armor, so your evasion is not necessarily your armor, like I said. Your evasion is your ability to not get hit by things, however you want to flavor that. You do have armor, and you can spend a point of your armor to reduce the threshold. So if you're taking 3 damage, you can reduce the threshold by 1, which makes you only take 2 damage, or 2 to 1, or 1 to 0, and you can only spend 1. So it's very interesting. It's very resource management. You've got your armor, you've got your your hope, you've got your stress and HP, because there is both. There's stress points and HP, so you gotta watch both of those. So I think getting good at managing your resources and deciding what to spend when, or what damage you can take or where, is going to be how you get, like, fairly proficient at, like, DaggerHeart combat, if you wanted to think about it that way.
really like some of the abilities that you can get where you can
Mhm.
spend you take a stress and then you can do like something fucking insane.
Mhm.
Like for my character, I can spend a stress and I can like teleport between shadows.
Yeah, that's the rogue Nightwalker has that
Yeah.
ability and is very cool. So we had a session 0 and we did all of our world building. We won't get super specific into it because it's not DaggerHeart specific, but we built a very cool fantasy world. We all added stuff. People added cities, talked about what was going on in that city, what the conflict of that city was, which is really my only advice I would take from our world building is make sure that places have conflict, right? If you're building a town and you're like, oh, it's a town of academics and, they care about, studying the arcane and history and, they have all these massive libraries and things like that. That's super cool. But if the players show up there, there's not anything happening, right? You just have people being like, oh yeah, we're the librarians. We, here, look at all of our tomes. Or like, that's cool. But, there's nothing happening. It is it is a game, right? So, but if you would say, some of these books, they're finding that the history is rewriting itself and some of the books are inaccurate and the information is wrong, then it's like, okay, there's a thing here. The players investigate it. Maybe you find out that a rogue member of the Arcane Council has been using some, curse to, kind of, mess up with all the written history and cause problems. Then there's a story there, right? There's a quest. There's a thing to do. Yeah. So do that. So
I think about it a lot like the way it should be structured is like a good RPG like Skyrim.
Yeah, for sure.
Like every place you go to in Skyrim feels alive and there's always something going wrong in every place.
Yeah, you gotta have something to do.
That just gives you the option to like accept a mission somewhere and do something that's not like story specific.
Yeah. Like when you show up to Whiterun, the Jarl's not like, welcome to Whiterun. Things are good here. How are you?
Everything's pretty chill.
No, you show up and he's like, there's a fucking dragon. Help us, and then you go and you fight the dragon, right? So, I guess technically you tell him that there are dragons and he says, oh shit.
And then the dragon shows up.
So, make conflict. Make conflict in your world on a big scale and make conflict in the smaller scale places of interest that you're going to go.
And then you can expand that further and make conflict with people. And
it goes all the way.
Keep getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah. So we did that. We did our session 0. We built a very cool world. You sketched our map for us, and then I took that into Incarnate, which we said before, so I won't get too deep into it, but I digitized it and made it digital and then printed it out for you guys. So we had a cool map, a cool world, and we made characters. I will let you talk about your character that you made and your thought process and what you were attracted to, and then I will talk about the other two that our players made.
I made a ribbit, which is a frog race rogue, and my thought process behind it was kind of to be more like a Robin Hood figure, like brave and like willing to steal things from people, but not for like personal gain. So that was my thought process behind it. That's pretty much all I had going into our session 0. And then we did some world building stuff and answered like some of the character questions that went a little bit deeper into it.
The character sheet gives you some background questions to flesh out your character, and then it also gives you some connection questions that like the other players kind of answer with you to like connect you to the other party members. The connection
questions were very funny.
They're very fun.
One of the connections that I had was to one of the other party members. I like tricked him to dig a grave for me.
It was like,
I stole the loot from it to give it away.
Yeah, the question was like, how did like we get in trouble or something?
Yeah, how did we get in trouble one time? And it was, I thought that was funny.
I liked your character a lot.
I like things like that a lot.
I thought it was a very fun choice. I love the Robin Hood thing because early on, I think that'll add some really fun encounters where you feel the need to steal something for the greater good or whatever, but also like as a whole it's a good character concept because someone who wants to help the like general masses, wants to help the people, right? Like the and especially the bottom tier of people, the people that are in need, right? The person that wants to help those people can make that transition very easily into I want to save the world, which
Yeah.
eventually is the point of all D&D campaigns. I mean, most D&D campaigns. I guess if you're playing something, super different. But, I mean, a lot of our D&D campaigns, we want to save the world. That's why we play. It's fun. And that kind of character can make that transition very easily.
Yeah, I quite enjoy it. I think he's fun. His name is Fern.
Mm-hmm.
A little green frog.
Little green frog guy. He's very cute. So as a Nightwalker rogue, you could move from shadows to shadows.
It pulls. There's different. What are they called? Not like the classes.
The domains.
There's classes where it's like yes, the domains. So as a rogue, I pull from the
Grace and Midnight domains.
Yes, Grace and Midnight domains, which overlaps some with Bard and I believe like Sorcerer or something.
Yes.
Which is really interesting that you can have like similar abilities to like a Bard, but also do things that like a wizard can do. Mm-hmm. But they all feel very suited towards like a rogue. And then and that's interesting for me to think about because I'm like, these are very roguish cards. And then if I was playing a sorcerer, I'd be like, these are excellent cards for a sorcerer. Yeah. And if I played a bard, I'd be like, these are perfect cards for a bard.
Yeah.
It's just like the build. It's so cool that there's those domains that you pull from.
And we didn't have a bard or a sorcerer, so you had really the freedom of choice there. But if we did, yes, you would be sharing with that player to be like, okay, we're both looking at like, let's say Midnight or whatever, for instance, if it's a sorcerer. So it's like, okay, well, I really want this one, and maybe you could take this one, blah blah. So you guys would have some back and forth there, which is cool. But you had a total free reign.
Yeah, I just looking through the cards, happily picking whatever I wanted to. There's some very interesting ones. Like I've got one that's like an AoE. If like I'm like surrounded by a horde or something, I can spend I think a hope to cast like a spell that like throws like a bunch of knives out from me, or
that's
like
super
projected
cool.
Knives. It's super cool. And then I'm pulling from the charming one too, so I have like a lot to deception, mm-hmm. So
yeah,
it's just really interesting how they do the classes. I like it a lot.
I like it a lot too. I think it works super well, and like you said, like it's crazy how those cards can fit into multiple classes, or I guess each domain fits into 2 classes, but then they managed to do it so well.
Yeah.
Our 2 other characters, we had a Divine Wielder Seraph, which is the Seraph is kind of the cleric or paladin. It definitely fits in both. It's a little bit of healing, a little bit of combat, and that's supported by the fact.
And his race was
a Clank, which is a robot.
Yeah,
he was a robot guy, which is really cool. We made it fit into our world, which was very fun. Like we talked about how Clanks are built and what that looks like, and are they rare or are they common? So those are good things. If somebody picks like one of the ancestries that maybe is like we don't do Warforged a lot in our game, so that was like something that's a little bit newer to us. I mean, we've done it a little bit before, but not super common. So I wanted to find a way to kind of ground it in our world. The Seraph pulls from Splendor and Valor. Splendor is a lot of the divine magic and healing, and Valor is very much like tanky protection fighting. Which is great. So he had some cards that gave him some really high thresholds, which made him really tanky, and then a little bit of healing and stuff as well. So I like that character a lot. And then
he's pretty fun to bounce off of.
Yeah, he played it in a very fun way.
Yeah, he played it in a good way that like my very energetic, brave little frog can mess around with pretty easily.
Mm-hmm. And then our third player made a Warden of the Elements druid Galapa, which is like a turtle person, very like Master Oogway-ish. And he made he did a mixed race. He did Galapa and Fungril, which is like a mushroom people. And so there was a term in the book, because it has some example mixed heritages or ancestries. There's so many words now. Every game uses a different term for like race, species, ancestry, heritage. Or this one, it is ancestry, and your ancestry consists of your species and your background, which is like like your background in Dungeons and Dragons. But this one's a little bit more vague. There's like, Wildborn or Wildborn, Wanderborn, Slyborn, Highborn. They kind of talk about, where you come from, and you get like a little ability off that as well. So he played a Galapa.
As his mixed race, he pulled one ability from each racial card.
Yes. Yeah. So you get one from each, and then we called it a Shroom Shell. Was the Fungrill and Galapa Shroom Shell was what we came up with, which I thought was good, or that was in the book somewhere as an example. And he played a Warden of the Elements Druid, which was pretty cool. He could like choose to channel an element, and it would give him kind of bonus in some way. So like I know at some point he channeled the air element, which like allowed him to kind of hover and have advantage on acrobatics checks.
Yeah, that was very funny. You'd be like, "Oh, I have this card that says hover." I have this card that says hover, and you're like, "What does it do?" And he says, "It says you can hover."
Yeah, it was very blunt. I was like, "All right." They pull from the Arcana and the Sage domains, so a lot of magic, both like typical, arcane magic and nature magic. So those were our characters going into it. We had a very classic kind of. Not exactly a you meet in a tavern, but like there was a well-known tavern keeper that knew all of you guys and kind of pulled you in to tell you about something he and some others had uncovered, and he trusted you to look into it. You went off. You started finding some pieces to a puzzle in a nearby iron mine. You started breaking down. It was a long poem. You started breaking down the poem that led you to certain locations to do certain things.
And the clank, which played by Gavin, then destroyed one of the pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, there was a piece of the poem that was like, a breathless statue. So my idea for that was like there was the statue of this god, and I thought you guys would. I know that that little Gavin playing the druid we have both the other players in our group are both named Gavin. We refer to one as Little Gavin, the other as Big Gavin. It's don't worry, just as confusing to us as it might be to you to keep straight. But Little Gavin was playing the druid, the Galapa Shroom Shell druid, and he had a wind spell, so I'm like, that's a great solution to a breathless statue. Also, just like kind of any kind of interesting air or like blowing breath into this statue, blow like a lot of answers there that I would have accepted. Our clank,
I kissed it.
Sarah, you did kiss it, which on the exhale finally is how you guys figured out that would have been the solution. But before you did that, because you kissed a broken head of the statue that was on the ground, because our Seraph Clank decided when he saw the statue to destroy it, just to absolute bring it to rubble. I don't know why. I'm not really sure what in the poem that I had conveyed that you should destroy the statue, but that was his answer. So he didn't. So that you guys had to find a new answer to the puzzle because that mechanism was utterly ruined. Which and just as like I guess advice from the DM standpoint, like I don't care if I definitely let them know that was not the answer I was looking for. That statue didn't work anymore. They realized after Jake kissed the broken head of the statue what the answer would have been. I had some arcane glyphs within the statue that lit up as he breathed into the mouth of it, and so they realized where they went wrong. But I also allowed them to then circumvent that and find a different way through. I didn't just like completely like, well, I guess campaign over.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
So you figured it out. You continued onward. You fought a scorpion, giant cave scorpion. And then when you went down a well where you found a lot of bones and gold, and the final piece of the puzzle that you were looking for, and the bones all came together to create a construct, which is a tier 1, which is level 1 enemy. And it did not go so well.
We got our asses kicked.
You guys got beat the hell up. I would say, I just rolled everything straight. Like it was my first experience with combat other than the scorpion as well, so I wasn't really sure how everything was going to roll or fly. But I just rolled everything straight. His attacks were pretty good. He has like a trample attack that hits anyone in his line. So that typically was hitting like 2 of you because, you guys never were super specific about like spreading out. And you were getting some good damage in. Unfortunately, little Gavin playing the Galapa Druid. There's a couple reasons that this happened, and I'll break them down because I think it is good advice for DaggerHeart. The first mistake was the Druid does not have very high thresholds. He was not a very tanky character. He also didn't use his wild shape ability to become something more tanky, which he maybe could have done. And then as he took damage, I think it was just a resource management
We forgot
thing.
about armor.
Yeah,
None of us used any armor that
I
session.
think Big Gavin did. He reduced
No,
armor.
I didn't.
But yeah, there was.
I almost died too.
Yeah, there was some resource management issues. It was a very new system for us. It was our session 1. People were forgetting. So, Big Gavin playing the Seraph had a prayer dice that could have done some healing or reduced some damage. He forgot to use that. Little Gavin didn't reduce any of his damage with his armor. He also had a healing potion that he didn't use. So, a lot of stuff going on, and it did lead to him hitting 0 hit points. Which
Poor Snaps died.
Poor Snaps Shivershell. Yeah, I don't think we said his name. His name is Snaps Shivershell, which is a great name. The Clank's name was Ziv, spelled Xiv, like 14, because we said he was like the 14th construct that had been built. Cool stuff. Snaps Shivershell was taken to 0 hit points. When you die in DaggerHeart, you get a couple different options. Let me bring it up because I don't want to paraphrase because they are pretty specific and I think it's worth looking at.
Yeah, they are. The death options are cool. I like them a lot.
I like them a lot. When we played Dungeon World, it had a similar mechanic. There were some things you would do on death. And this one, I like these options even better than the ones in
I like
Dungeon
it a lot
World.
better than D&D's you roll death saves. There's a lot more interesting outcomes.
Yeah,
that
and then
can
you're
happen.
like, you can get back up, and then you get down again. You can get back up, and you get down again. There's a lot in D&D for the edition I don't love. So here are the options when you die. So when you hit 0 hit points. Blaze of Glory. Your character embraces death and goes out in a blaze of glory. Take 1 action, which critically succeeds, then cross the veil of death. I love this one, because sometimes... this is a very narrative game, right? So you're always trying to do things in service of the story. And sometimes there are certain characters that it would just make sense that they're not really thinking about self-preservation, right? They're not thinking about how can I live in this situation. They are thinking about felling an enemy, saving their friends, saving the world. And sometimes that means doing the most, amount of damage or most effective critical move in their last moments, even if it is at their own expense. And this is exactly what that does. I love that this is an option as someone and sometimes Blaze of Glory self-sacrifice deaths can be very fun and satisfying. And I think that the way to make them more successful in a game is to have something like this where it does feel impactful. You have a guaranteed critical success on an action. I like it a lot. The second one is the much more conservative option, Avoid Death. Your character avoids death and faces the consequences. They temporarily drop unconscious, and then you work with the GM to describe how the situation worsens. Your character can't move or act while unconscious, they can't be targeted by an attack, and they return to consciousness when an ally clears 1 or more of their marked hit points, or when the party finishes a long rest. After your character falls unconscious, roll your hope die. If its value is equal to or under your character's level, they gain a scar. So... Scars permanently reduce 1 of your hope, which is a very important resource for you. I really like this one as well, because I do like the idea of, having the character obviously live, continue to go on. Mm-hmm. I like that they fall unconscious, because I do think a consequence of going down does need to be that you're out of the fight, right? Your party needs to be now down 1 person, and the fight is more difficult because of that. You can get back up if you are healed for 1 hit point, which is nice. But I also love that there's the chance to gain a scar, because it's like, of course, if there's just a choice that's like, yeah, you live, you're okay, but you're unconscious, that's very boring to me, because there needs to be a consequence for death, I think, always.
Yeah.
And so option to get a scar, which like permanently nerfs your character. You lose a hope point forever. And having this happen 2 or 3 times possibly, and like losing multiple hope points would be really detrimental, and it might.
Yeah, if you don't have any hope points, you're fucked. There's like.
I think it says in here, if you ever cross out your last hope slot, it's time to end your character's journey. Work with the GM to find a fitting way for the party to say goodbye to them at the end of the session, then prepare a new character. So they could retire, they could die, they could go somewhere else, right? So if you fully run out of hope, your character's journey also ends. But I do think it's a good consequence. And because you don't want your character to be permanently nerfed, it might push you in the direction of either Blaze of Glory or our last option, Risk It All. Roll your duality dice. If the hope die is higher, your character stays on their feet and clears an amount of hit points or stress equal to the value of the hope die. If the fear die is higher, your character crosses through the veil of death. If you critically succeed, your character stays up and clears all hit points and stress. So this is just full gamble. On a fear, you're dead. On a hope, you're back in. On a crit, you're way back in. Like, and it's very fun. Obviously, that roll, super like high risk, high reward, super stressful at the table. Everybody's holding their breath. This is the option that our druid chose. He went full gamble.
He's a risk it all guy.
He's a gambler. He's a risk it all, everything on the table kind of guy. And so this is what he chose, which I don't blame him for. But like when he,
oh my god,
when he hit 0,
it's so bad.
It was so bad. When he hit 0 and the option for him to die came up, I started to get a little nervous. I felt bad as a DM. I felt like, oh, it's session 1 and a character died. Like maybe I didn't understand the rules. Obviously, to my knowledge, I ran everything correctly. Not that matters, but like, I can be pretty hard on myself in those kind of situations of like, I messed up. But I think I ran everything correctly. It was mostly like the resource management issue that we talked about, not using some class abilities, which is not anybody's fault.
We're all new to the game.
Yeah, we're all learning.
That's just inevitable.
Yeah. So that's, that's how that happened. And then, he could have chose to avoid death. He could have, it's always his choice to continue his character's journey, but he chose to fully gamble, to risk it all. We had him roll his fear die first to see what he had to beat, which I do think was a really fun way to do it. Rather than looking at 2 dice and trying to quickly decide which one's higher. He rolled the fear dice. He rolled a 4. We're like, he can totally beat a 4.
We're like, oh my god, this is so good. He's got a 66% chance.
They're
These are
D12s.
gambling odds. You'd be betting on this in Vegas right now.
He rolls the hope die. The golden dice click,
so fucking bad.
Falls in. It's a 3. It was so distressing.
Slow-mo.
So,
if he would have rolled a 4, though, he would have critted on it, and that would have given him all of his HP back, correct?
Yeah, it would have.
Which makes that suck even more.
He was so close, but he rolled a 3, and so Snaps Shiver Shell crossed into the veil of death. I described to him kind of what he saw in his moment of death, which connected back to some of the answers that he gave in his background questions. And will probably lead to some interesting stuff later. That will come back up again. I'm gonna use that.
There is something that I want to start next session off with, and
yeah.
I think that was a good segue though into like rolling.
Mm-hmm.
The like critting in the game, there is critting. It's any time that both your D12s are the same number.
Mm-hmm.
So if you roll double 1s, that's a crit.
Yeah.
If you roll double 12s, that's a crit. And the crits in that game are awesome. They're so cool. Everything's so good.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I love the scale of failure and success. Succeeding with fear, succeeding with hope, kind of giving you different outcomes, and failing with fear and failing with hope, giving you different outcomes, and adding or subtracting to your resources that are available to you is very fun. And as a DM, it's just more interesting. Even on a success with fear, it's like, having this kind of unexpected thing happen that maybe makes you mark a stress or mark a hit point or spotlights something in the environment that happens. Lots of interesting things you can do with that. And the crit is very fun. Yeah, having it be doubles on any number is very fun. It also makes them not incredibly uncommon. They'll come up. I think you guys critted once or twice in our first session, which was great.
I did the math. It's like a 24% chance that you crit.
Is it? That seems high, but that's not bad. Yeah, so I like the crits a lot. They are, narratively and normal rolls are great. Your character clears a stress and gets a hope point, so it's great. Just stat wise, like it gives you some more resources to spend. Clears a stress from you, which is great. And then they narratively do the best possible outcome of whatever they're doing, which is awesome. In combat, there is like a critical attack, which you take whatever your damage die is and take the highest number and then add that to the roll. So if you have a D10 on your greatsword and you crit, you take 10 and then you roll all your damage normally and all your normal additions and then add that 10 because it's the highest of your die on. So it is a good. Crits don't always feel super good, depending on how you rule them, and I like these crits a lot.
29% chance.
29. Okay, interesting. So yeah, not super uncommon to see crits. So if you're going to GM DaggerHeart, your players they will be critting. So be prepared for that. How you handle that?
Yeah, it does. I think it does make the game pretty interesting. It makes it a lot it makes it cool for the players too. That you're always kind of doing something super heroic and really interesting.
Yeah. So we instantly had to segue into creating another character because his character died, which was not something I was ready for. But as
something anyone was ready for.
That kind of combat wrapped up and you guys killed the construct and your ally was laying there motionless is kind of where I ended it because I didn't want to I wanted you guys to have some time to kind of think about how your character was going to react to that. I rolled up another character for little Gavin with him. He went with a Ribbit Wizard, School of War.
He also did another multi-race Ribbit with
the Infernus. Which is like a tiefling, it's, a demon, lineage. And yeah, he pulled, not to get into, again, like specifics of our specific world building stuff, because you guys anybody that's listening will have their own thing, hopefully, for it. But he pulled some from, some background questions that you had made for your character. So you had already established that you had a younger brother. You had a dad that was involved in like the criminal underworld, and you had a mom that was from this like very academic, kind of city of high magic users, right? A lot of magic users and mastery of the arcane. And so he made a character that had come from that same city, same parentage. He was playing your younger brother named Herb, who is a Ribbit and an Infernus. And so he kind of like he described it as like a horned toad, which I thought was kind of cool. And he went with the School of War Wizard. So coming from that high academia, arcane magic mastery, went with the School of War Wizard. I love the wizards class cards that they get.
It's so fucking cool.
So they pull from the Codex and the Splendor. So Splendor was the divine magic one. So they can actually wizards can get a little bit of healing and some divine magic, which is cool. Or they pull from Codex. And all the Codex cards are spellbooks. Like they all are like, the book of this, the book of that, the grimoire of this person. And that has like some very wizardy name, right? And they have multiple spells on them. So every single card will have like 3 or 4 spells on it. So every time you pick a card from Codex, you have a new grimoire or a new book or a new, tome kind of with your character that has some spells in it. And so it plays into that class fantasy of wizards having a lot of spells, a lot of utility.
Yeah, and the spells are pretty badass. I read like a couple of his cards, and they're just so like all of them are fucking bangers. Yeah. None of them, no bad cards. They're all super interesting.
There's all the greatest
super
hits.
Useful.
There's Mage Hand, there's Fireball, there's Ice Knife. Or they might not be called exactly that, but they're in there. You can get them.
Yeah.
And which I love, but they're also, because it's such a narrative focused game, they're a little bit more vague. They have some more use cases that those spells might not have had in other games that had similar spells, which I love. It just gives the wizard a lot of options, a lot of utility, like I said.
Yeah, the wizard is very interesting. Very interesting.
Also, like the Splendor domain, interesting to me, an interesting choice.
Yeah, for wizard.
Yeah, that they pull from the divine
Yeah,
as well.
wizard, like, classically, wizards don't usually get, like, healing anything.
Yeah, not really.
I kind of would have figured that, like, a sorcerer would pull more from a divine thing, because usually theirs is, like... Or no, that would be a warlock, actually. Never mind.
Oh, yeah, warlock would make sense. But there isn't really a warlock.
But there is no warlock.
Adjacent.
But I guess you could play a wizard like a warlock.
Absolutely.
If you're pulling more from the Splendor domain.
That's true. That's very true. That's a really good thought. Yeah, and that's what I love about this game. I mean, the classes, I can run over them really quickly. Bard, Druid, Guardian, which is a very tanky fighter, Ranger, Rogue, Seraph, which is our divine one, Sorcerer, Warrior, which is a more classic fighter, and Wizard. I just love the freedom that it gives, though, because, you know, like, especially with Warrior and Guardian, like, sure, they're martial, you know, they're kind of your classic fighters, one more tanky, one more damage focused, but, you know, that could be anything, you know, I mean, that could be, you know, thinking about, like, D&D archetypes, you know, barbarians or you know, things like that. It's like any kind of fighter you can think of could fit into any of those. That's I was classes.
Just thinking. I kind of like that there's no, like, barbarian class because you could play either of the fighter classes and they could be a barbarian.
Absolutely, yeah. A super tanky, strong, you know, guardian or a bloodthirsty, raging warrior would be a great, like, barbarian-esque character. I think that what you said, like having a warlock or somebody that made a pact with a patron fall into the wizard spellcasting or sorcerer, or, I mean, that could be anything, or seraph, you know what I mean? Seraph would be a cool one too, especially like the divine wielder. You get like a legendary weapon, so it's like you have a sword that was given to you from a patron or something, you know? Like anything could have a patron, which I just love. Like there's so much more freedom and room for creativity within the classes.
Bards aren't just music in this system. Bards are like charm.
Yeah.
And they can pull from like musical ties, but their biggest thing is just like, how charming are you? Mm-hmm. Are you charming with your words? Are you charming with your song? Are you a poet? Things like that.
Yeah. So
it's a lot more interesting than D&D's. Mm-hmm. Like I've never really been too inclined to play a bard, but this system makes me kind of want to play a bard.
Yeah, the two subclasses for bard are troubadour, which is bolstering your allies with music, or wordsmith, which is use clever wordplay to captivate crowds. So yeah, it's like all, you know, obviously pulls from the grace domain, and I believe the codex domain, so they can have all those tomes of spells as well. And then all of the
super
charm.
Magical, super deceptive or persuasive, really interesting class.
Yeah, I think Bard seems really cool in this game.
I imagine that if I DM this, that you'll probably play a Bard.
I honestly can't pick. I've thought about, you know, because I think eventually I would love for one of you guys to DM, and maybe we just, like, as you know, like we've done before, you know, stay in the same world. And I just give you guys the reins to kind of tell your own story in it. Because I would love to make a character. I'm super excited to make a character. And they all seem so fun, I can't pick. I already have like 4 character ideas. And I don't know.
You're always sitting on character ideas.
I know. I can't help myself. They're all just so cool.
I never sit on character. I'm the player. I never sit on character ideas. I don't even think about characters.
I know. You just come up with it in the moment. You're just fully free spirit, like, what seems cool to me right now, you know, what's calling to me, which I love. And then
when I'm in it, I'm in it. Mm-hmm. Me and Fern are the same now.
Yeah. No, it was really fun. I'm very excited to explore next session tomorrow. We're gonna play again. I'm very excited to explore you know, how you guys react to Snap Shivershell and his death. I'm excited for you to kind of come back to town and reconnect with your younger brother who has come, you know, seeking you out. You know,
it's gonna be a cool session.
Yeah,
I'm super pumped for it.
I'm very excited.
We've done a lot of good things about this. I have a complaint.
Oh no! What do you think?
I do.
Get into it.
I might have a second complaint also. It's just the first complaint that I have. I wrote this down. Is that when proposed, I originally expected. Now this complaint is not like the game systems itself fault. I thought that this was going to be much like Dungeon World and that it was going to be very rules light. but
sure.
it is not. This is a pretty rules heavy system. It just focuses on a much more narrative structure to the game as opposed to like focusing more heavily on the rules themselves. But the rules,
like the mechanics.
There are a lot. There's a ton of rules. There's a ton of things on your character sheet.
Yeah.
I was expecting there to be like armor, health, what I roll, and that's about it. Like maybe some abilities or something. And then like it's a little overwhelming at first because it is significantly different than any other system we've played.
To put in perspective, so you choose your class, which gives you your character sheet, and every class has evasion, armor, health, stress, hope, and a class feature. Then you choose your ancestry, which gives you your background and your species, which gives you usually 3 abilities, 2 on your species, 1 on your background. If you do a hybrid species, you pick 1 from each, so you have 2 cards. That is another thing about DaggerHeart is you get physical cards with your abilities on them. I think that probably implied that, but yeah, cool. I like it. It's a cool way to read your abilities, and you have the whole thing there with you. Then you pick, I think 2 or. I think
you pick 2.
You pick 2 cards from your domains. So for like Rogue, yours was Grace and Midnight, and you could pick 2 of, you could pick 2 Midnights or 2 Graces or 1 of each. I think you did 1 of each.
Just what you want to focus on.
Yeah. And so you pick 2 of those, which gives you at least 2 more abilities, if not more, depending on the cards. Like, like I said with the tomes, like the Codex, like those have 3 spells on them. So if you pick 2 of those, you'd have 6 spells. There's a lot going on in your character sheet, plus your inventory, your gold, your starting items, your all your character information, your background questions, your connection questions with the other players. Like, yeah, there's a lot going on.
There are a lot of systems where you can have your session 0 and your session 1 be on the same day.
Yeah. And
then just be combined thing. This is not one of them. Your session 0 is going to take quite a while.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you're like you do what we did, where we built our world and created our characters. Like, I mean, we did like 2 or 3 hours for session 0, and then it was.
I mean, it's pretty long. And then the second gripe that I had is I cannot for the life of me tell if we rolled too much or too less, too little. Like, I felt like we were rolling like a lot. But then, like, I was thinking back at it, and I was like, were we actually rolling a lot, or were we not? Because we're constantly just getting, like, filled with, like, hope, and your fear pool is loaded.
Yeah. I mean, that I think tells you right there, like, you are rolling a lot, right? Because hope and fear are directly tied to your rolls. So, I think we did roll a lot, which, I mean,
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, though. You know what I mean? I from playing the last session, I could not tell if it was too much or not.
Yeah, it is tough. I think it's good because the resources of hope and fear are tied directly to your rolls. Like, you want to roll so that players can get their hope so that they can do their class abilities. And you want to roll so that as a GM, you have some fear points to be able to enact your stuff as well. So, I mean, I think it would be difficult to play without rolling as much, but also because of the sliding scale of success or failure, I think it was important for me because, like, if you guys said, like, oh, I want to look at this mechanism and decipher it, well, what do you know? What do you find out? So it's easier for me if you say I fail with fear. It's like, okay, not only do you fail to decipher it, but like something that that unexpected happens, like that kind of gives me a direction to go. Whereas if you like succeed with fear, it's like, okay, you understand the mechanism, but in that moment you realize something, blah, blah, blah. Like it gives me a direction as a GM, which is very nice, rather than just like giving you the answer or not giving you the answer just off of my own whims. I like kind of letting the dice decide the narrative of like, yes, you understand this, and and then the and is with hope.
I think
the
fear. Spot where we maybe like where like I initially thought about that was when we were like pickaxing the wall, and it took quite a long time. Like it took a lot of rolls because it kept failing.
Yeah, that was just unfortunate because it was like, you guys just were failing a lot, so it was like, it was hard for me to say like on a failure, you made any progress. Like I guess on a failure with hope, that could be a good one. Is like you don't do it, like you don't get through the wall if you're like trying to pickaxe through the wall. You don't get through the wall, but you make pretty good progress. Like that could be a failure with hope. Whereas a success is like you get through the wall. So yeah, that could have been a little bit.
I think a failure with fear, it probably could have been something like, oh, you realize that this wall is too hard for this pickaxe, like a pickaxe to be able to break through. You're gonna have to find another way in.
Yeah, that could have been.
So it would have taken us away from the wall. But other than that, like everything, I think went pretty smoothly.
Yeah, that also
Gavin
came.
dying.
Which
for snaps, shiver, shell dog.
Yeah, which we said, we gave our reasons why that happened, but it was unfortunate. I think it's a good lesson. It was a good lesson for us. Now we'll know, like, hey, this game can be deadly. You gotta use your armor. You gotta watch your class abilities. What can you do to reduce some of this damage?
It was pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting coming off the last system that we played that had like 4 fucking rules.
Yeah,
going back into because we played D&D and we played Never Stop Blowing Up, and then we played this, and I was like in the rules light, like, oh, Never Stop Blowing Up, perfect amount of rules, everything that I need to know is on my character sheet.
Yeah, very rules light, very very rules light. This is a little more crunchy, but I think it's good because being more crunchy allows there for more options, which allows there for more creativity. Like the fact that there are as many classes as there are, with 2 subclasses, with ancestries and that include, species and background. It gives a lot of options. I think it adds longevity to the system. Like obviously, once we learn,
I agree with that.
It won't feel so bad.
I think that the downfall of a system like Dungeon World that we do really like is that it's not very well suited for like incredibly long, like year-long campaigns.
Yeah,
like you're gonna hit max level, maybe like session 10.
Yeah, and so like every, you have options, but like everything's contained on your character sheet in Dungeon World, like everything. So, all your level up options and stuff are on your character sheet. And like, there's an okay amount, but not a ton. Like every paladin, other than like, flavor stuff, like, if you flavor things differently or whatever, which can be cool, but every paladin is going to have a lot of crossover, right? They're going to pick some of the same abilities that, that no matter how much you flavor it, the ability reads the same, right? And so, but with this game, because of 2 subclasses, multiple ancestries, backgrounds, and then even if someone played the same classes, like if tomorrow somebody made a Nightwalker Rogue, but then they chose other domain cards than you, their Nightwalker Rogue would play pretty differently than yours.
Well, even if they just chose like a different race and background, to me, I feel like they'd be significantly different.
Yeah. Yeah, so I love that.
That's I think the biggest plus to this is it is like designed with large campaigns in mind.
Yeah. True.
Which we haven't done like a big long campaign in a really long time.
But we are now.
So I am very excited for it.
Yeah, that was our plan with DaggerHeart. Was like, all right, we are locking in for this. Like this could be a year-long campaign. Plus more. Like we, if we're loving it, we might continue to play DaggerHeart and continue on. Have as we continue to grow the world and expand and tell more stories, and have other people DM. Like I love having other people DM in the same world. So like I'm still totally sold on all the world building because I had a hand in a lot of it. But then I get to make a character and experience new stuff in that world. Like it's just very very cool.
Yeah, it only goes up to level 10, so we might have to be very sparing with how much we level up. Is what I've kind of been thinking about also.
True. Yeah. Like
your level up might happen like every 3 to 4 sessions if you're planning on doing like a long campaign.
Also, you get a lot on leveling up.
Yeah, you do get a ton of shit on
there's like a list of things you can pick from, and you get to pick 2. So it could be like multiple more domain cards, it could be more health, more stress, so like every level up is pretty impactful. So yeah, I would say being a little bit more sparing with them is not a bad idea. Also, like the book, this is maybe one of my gripes that I have.
Ooh.
I didn't think I had one, but I think I actually have one.
You discovered one.
The book doesn't have a lot of monsters in it. This book, DaggerHeart, needs a monster manual. If Matt Mercer, if you're listening, if any of the developers at Darrington Press are listening, we need a monster manual. That should be next for sure. Because the stat blocks in the book are great, and there's a ton of options, and they pick some really cool ones. And I don't want to spoil them because I don't want you to know, because I need to be able to pull them out. But there's some really cool stuff in there. There's just not a ton. And so I would love a monster manual. But the thing that's really nice is the balancing for combat's very easy because it separates it into the tiers. So players have their level, and that falls into a tier. So there's tier 1, 2, 3, and 4. Tier 1 is level 1. Tier 2 is levels 2 through 4. Tier 3 is levels 5 through 8. And tier 4 is levels 8 through 10. Or 5 through 7, 8 through 10, I think. And so the monsters in that section of the book are separated into tiers. So like you guys were level 1, so I used all tier 1 monsters. And they actually have like kind of guides for like how many of each monster makes sense, because there's like monsters are classified into like minions or brutes or solos. So like solos, the construct that you guys fought is a tier 1 solo. So it's like, this is like a boss. Like this is like a one enemy fight, right?
Interesting.
Which where like the scorpion was like a bruiser. So it's like, yeah, this guy's gonna like hurt pretty bad, but like he's not.
This is what you fight like on the way to a boss battle.
Yeah, it's like and it's pretty self-explanatory in the name, right? He's a bruiser. He's gonna hurt you, but he's not necessarily like gonna tank a lot of damage or last forever, where like a solo would, right?
This isn't like a deadly encounter. It's not meant to be a deadly encounter.
It's gonna hurt you a little bit. It's gonna bruise you up, right? Or like the minions. It's like, okay, there's gonna be a lot of these, right? Like a goblin would be like a minion. There's gonna be a lot of these little guys running around, doing some damage, doing this kind of stuff.
That's really interesting. I didn't.
Yeah, and the stat blocks.
You've taught me this.
Yeah, the stat blocks have interesting stuff on them too. They have HP with their thresholds, so the player's damage falls somewhere within their threshold, which deals 1, 2, or 3 damage. The monsters also have stress, so they can have stress inflicted upon them from the players, but also they can spend stress for some of their abilities that do more interesting stuff. Or some of them spend fear points from the GM, so I can spend a fear point to unlock an ability from one of the monsters. So they have cool stuff. The monster stat blocks also have like kind of guides for like actions that they might do. So like I remember the construct said like they might like destroy something or throw a large object or things like that. It gives you some guides for like cool moves that kind of monster would do or be good at. So the stat blocks are great and really easy for balancing. I just need more. There needs to be. I need a whole book. I need a DaggerHeart monster manual with all kinds of cool creations from the minds at Darrington Press.
Yeah, I'm sure as the more people get into it and kind of make the move from D&D to DaggerHeart, because that is the 1-to-1 move, right?
Yeah,
DaggerHeart is explicitly looking at D&D players as for their target audience, and I think as that happens, you'll get more like homebrew monsters made online.
Yeah.
I don't know if there are any.
So DaggerHeart is kind of an open source game. I don't know exactly the legality terms of it, but like you're allowed to make stuff for it. So there's actually already a website from DaggerHeart. It's an official website where you can make homebrew domain cards. So
really?
Yeah. So there's already an online domain card maker where you can go and make custom domain cards or pull from ones that other people have made, and you can add art to them and add text, and they look all correct and in format with the other domain cards, and then you can print those out if you wanted to steal the physical cards. You can print them for your players.
There's already like a D&D Beyond version of DaggerHeart.
There's a online.
That's crazy.
So yeah, good stuff for the future DaggerHeart. I don't know if you saw, Jake, but they just some really long time like Wizards of the Coast like employees just switched over. Jeremy Crawford and Chris Perkins. If you've ever watched like a D&D YouTube video, Dungeons & Dragons Wizards of the Coast YouTube video talking about like some book that's coming out ever, you've seen Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford. They just joined the Darrington Press team. So
I know exactly who these guys are.
Yeah, so they now work at Darrington Press designing DaggerHeart instead of Wizards of the Coast designing D&D. So, like you said, DaggerHeart...
Dude, Wizards of the Coast is fucked.
They've been in a rough spot for a long time, and I was never totally on the train of like DaggerHeart's the D&D killer. That might have sold me a little bit. DaggerHeart is looking at
Jeremy
players...
Crawford moving, especially. That guy's like the face.
Yeah. And so now, like you said, DaggerHeart is looking at D&D players. It's saying, look at what we're creating. It's more narrative. It's more story driven. It's more dramatic. Which, like we've said, there's a divide of like a kind of new generation of D&D players. I think, especially coming from places like Critical Role that want a really story, narrative, focused games. They want to tell an epic fantasy story, and DaggerHeart is perfect for that. And the future for DaggerHeart looks bright. I'm very excited to see what books come out. They've already partnered with other like tabletop RPG companies to make supplemental books. So there's already some like campaigns out there and adventure modules and stuff for DaggerHeart. Because like I said, it's kind of has this like open source policy. Like I said, I don't know the exact legality of it, but like I know it's very easy to work with them basically to create stuff. And so yeah, so there's already stuff out there for that. In the DaggerHeart book, it has other campaign frames, which is like kind of a little head start in some world building. It describes to you a world, it gives you a map and says some stuff you could add to it or some, core tenets of this world. So it does give you some of those in the book. And then a lot of I think this is the why, especially some of the monster manual aspect of it or the stat block portion of it isn't as big as I would like, is because a lot of those monsters are made specifically for some of the campaign frames, which is cool, but it makes them specific, and we're not playing any of those campaign frames, so I'm less likely to pull from those ones probably, and just to pull from the more generic ones. So, but yeah, really good stuff. I'm super excited about DaggerHeart.
Oh my god, they have like they have a thing where it like shows things that have yet to be released.
Really?
There's already 2 classes on there.
What? Where? Hold on.
Witch and Sage. If you go to the Void, or sorry, Witch and Assassin.
Where is this?
And then there's more ancestries. Do you want me to
DaggerHeart. So on DaggerHeart.com, you can go to the Void. Oh, wow. Yeah, so the Witch class is already
Warlock.
out.
They got a Warlock class, a Brawler class that they're looking at. That's awesome.
Brawler. Wow. So I didn't even know.
And they're giving new.
Wow, Brawler's kind of a.
These are playtests. These are not.
Yeah, but they're out. They're available to people.
Yeah, they're available to playtest.
Wow. That's
awesome. So cool.
Yeah, so Witch pulls from Sage and Dread. Dread is a custom one. That's interesting. But it's like kind of some necromancy and some forest, nature magic. Yeah, Witch, I love that vibe. Hedge and Moon are the subclasses. Assassin pulls from Midnight and Blade. So very fightery and roguish instead of charming and roguish. It's like very damage focused with the roguey stuff. Executioner's Guild or Poisoner's Guild. Warlock.
Dude, that's so cool.
I mean, this is classic Warlock. Pacts, right? Pact of the Endless, Pact of the Wrathful. Dude.
We're pulling from Dread and Grace.
So
like a more
Brawler
death focus
is very monk looking in aesthetic, but something that I already can tell about this, which I love.
Juggernaut and martial artist is crazy.
So like martial artist definitely obviously screams like, monk to me. Juggernaut feels very cool because something that a character I've always wanted to play was like a pugilist, like a bare knuckle boxer or fighter.
That'd be so cool.
But it's hard to build in D&D because it's like fighters don't necessarily get very good unarmed strikes, or monks have like a very specific aesthetic that's very kind of with the key points and stuff. It's kind of this like Eastern kind of take on it, and so it doesn't feel like a kind of bare knuckle brawler as much. So yeah, I bet a Juggernaut brawler.
Dude, there's 6 new ancestries too.
That's crazy. So basically,
and 6 new communities. Oh my god! Dude. But they're tied to the ancestries. It looks like.
Yeah,
so. It looks like they're dealing with what is it called? Elemental.
Oh yeah, Earthkin, Emberkin,
elemental
Skykin,
ancestries,
Tidekin.
and elemental communities.
That's great. I love that. And
then they have Gnome in there too.
Gnome is back. Yeah, I love that. So yeah, we loved DaggerHeart. Very excited to continue to play it. We will probably continue to update you guys with how our campaign's going and anything fun or interesting that happened. We might have our own stories from it. and I'm very excited for DaggerHeart's future. It seems like there's some really cool stuff coming down the pipeline that I really genuinely just now learned about. So
Dude, that's hilarious. So we both actually learned about this while recording.
Yeah. So anyways, my name's Keegan. This is my best buddy Jake. We've been the Gelatinous Dudes. If you have any thoughts about DaggerHeart, our email is below. Also, you can leave a comment on the Spotify page if you would like. We would love to read some of those. So if you have any DaggerHeart thoughts, if you've played it, if you have any stories, please let us know. I'd love to read them on our next episode and talk about them.
When did DaggerHeart come out? I know you bought it like the minute it came out.
Well, it only came out a couple weeks ago, maybe a month now. But there was like a beta like a year ago. But yeah, so reach out. I would love to hear from you guys. Other than that, we've been the Gelatinous Dudes. Goodbye.
Bye.